Hello and welcome to you all. My name is Mark Morley and this is the IT Business Partner Playbook, a unique series where I'm joined every week by business partners and business relationship managers from around the globe. This is the show where theory meets reality. In every conversation, we strip away the buzzwords and bring you the truths behind a business partnering, the tensions, the wins, the learning curves, and the human stories that shape the role. So whether you're stepping into BRM or shaping a strategy for an entire enterprise, this is your space to hear what actually works from the people who have actually done it. Before we jump into today's conversation, I've got two quick asks, as I always do. First, if you've got any thoughts or ideas or feedback about the podcast, I'd love to hear them, whether it's in the comments or directly to me. Your input really helps shape the kinds of conversations that we have here. So if there's a topic that you want us to dig into, please let me know. And secondly, if you are finding value in these episodes, please hit the subscribe button and give this episode a thumbs up. We've seen only 50% of those who watch are actually subscribers, which is pretty common, but it would really help us boost the channel if you could add your number to that. So on to today's episode, and I'm delighted to be joined by Gavin Galloway, an IT business partner for Rolls-Royce based in the US. Gavin is a veteran who's been in his current role for about 5 years, having spent probably a decade in IT roles. So good morning to you, Gavin, and thanks so much for joining me. Can I hand over to you for a quick introduction before we take a look at your journey here and discuss what business partnering means to you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be on. And, as someone who's been in my role, as you said, for 5 years, it's been an interesting journey to begin to understand what the role is and to dive into the various expertises that you have to grow very quickly when you jump into a role. I've often said that this is a role where you have to be a master of the gray space. And with a very diverse IT background, it's been really fun to take on this type of challenge. So, as you said, I'm a veteran. I'm based out of the US. I'm currently working for Rolls-Royce in North America. I work in the defense sector, and I cover a wide array of senior stakeholders within my organization. So, for my particular role, it's been extremely diverse in the various competing interests that the senior executives have across the board. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today and seeing where it takes us.
Perfect, thank you. So firstly, did you know what business partnering was? Have you heard of the role before you moved into it?
That's a great question. I did not at all. In fact, I wasn't even looking for a business partnering role. My wife sent me a job description for Rolls-Royce, knowing that I had come in contact with the company a couple different times through different channels, and I was eager to join the organization, but I wasn't on my own looking for a new role or unhappy. I just have a really intuitive wife, and she sent me the role with the job description, and it sounded like something that I would love. I'm a very people-oriented person. I've had a full career in IT, but looking back on my career and in reviewing specifically for this podcast, it became clearer and clearer that I've been doing business partnering throughout my career, where this particular role I had no idea existed. In fact, looking into the job description and trying to understand what it really was, I was probably 2 or 3 years into the role before I actually, and it clicked. But that goes back to where I started in BRM, was during the pandemic. I joined our organization in 2020 at the height of everyone being out of the office and at the absolute low point of anyone knowing how to actually navigate that. The ability to pass down or move through the organization with the tribal knowledge that you pick up when you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with someone. None of that was recorded or understood at the time. It was always a process of sitting with someone who is your senior or a mentor and going through the motions of the role, going through how to put your time into the time clock. I mean, anything even as simple as that was something that it was a learning process of how to learn in that process. So my exposure to the role prior to getting the role, very limited. But since then, diving into especially the BRM Institute and the various networking opportunities that are there, it's a whole world that exists kind of
Yeah.
simmering underneath the surface from the IT world.
And when you moved into the role, was it already established at Rolls-Royce? Was there kind of a framework that you could follow? Were there kind of guidelines that you could say, okay, right, this is actually what's required of me. I've got a job spec, so I know this is where I need to focus my attention.
Yes and no. So yes, the role was existing. I was coming in to fill a headcount opening that had a person that had moved on to another company. So the role did exist, but the way our organization was going through a transformation at the time, the shifting of our executive leadership team required a repositioning of each of our business partners. So within the defense organization, at that time, we had 6 business partners that each divided up the organization based on the senior leaders. That left a big chunk of our senior leadership team in what we now have deemed the headquarters functions. That left a big chunk there that needed someone to partner with them. Now, these pieces of the organization did not have nearly as much IT demand as, let's say, engineering or manufacturing, of course, but the areas of finance and HR and even down to our own IT organization within the defense portions did not have business partner representation. So there was this dynamic of, well, we need someone to be able to report back into those senior leaders, and we need a way for them to have an IT business partner there when they need them. But it's also, on the other side of the coin, a position where these senior leaders need to be coached on how a business partner actually works, what benefits we provide to them, how they can get the most out of us. And that has really been where much of my learning, right? Well, the first word that popped in my head has been frustration, but there is probably a better way of putting that, because it really has been a learning journey of, well, how do I actually advertise my skills and be more than just a talking head that comes in and says, hey, here are some best practices or something like that. Embedding myself in the business and showing the value that is created through that process is something that has been the biggest piece of work within this type of the position in the organization.
Did you do that as a team, so that you were all going out to partners to kind of send the same message, or is it something you kind of had to do on your own?
It was something I had to navigate on my own. I had some mentorship and leadership within my organization, but as I said, when I first started, it was in the middle of a transformation of the business, and it was in the middle of the pandemic where we really did not know what I did not know. And so there were times where I would come back to one of my other business partners that had been in the role for a while, and I would be able to ask questions and say, what does this mean? Or how do I get through this particular process? You know, the learning of the individual pieces of that knowledge. So the vertical knowledge of, okay, well, what do I actually do with this new idea that comes in? What do I do with a piece of demand or something that maybe someone who's 3 or 4 rungs down from an executive leader has this objective. They have to get an application on the estate that is not going to go anywhere. How do I navigate these pieces of that type of nuance in that piece? I was able to ask questions in there, but it took a few years of piecing all of those pieces of knowledge together to actually create a much more broad and full picture of what the business partner role is. And to that end, because the other areas of the business had existing relationships, it felt like my areas were falling farther behind because of my skill set not lining up, when in reality, it was at both sides of the equation. The partnering relationship was, not only did I not know the full breadth of how long it took to get a new idea onto the PMO, or how to get a new application listed onto our application list.
Hmm.
Not only was that a piece of it, but also those relationships that help garner a single source of value within the business and then within myself, those did not exist on the business side, and those needed to be put together.
So now you're further down the road, have you kind of set up an approach or your own framework so that if you were to move into a different role, someone can move into your role and know exactly what it is that's required of them and have kind of these strategies for each of their relationships kind of mapped out for them?
Yes, but as if I'm being honest, it could be something that would be very improved with some pointed attention. I think this is one of the reasons that I did go into the BRM Institute's BRMP training, was to help me understand these frameworks, because in my organization, I was one of 3 new business partners that needed to go through that training and get caught up with our more tenured partners. By doing that, I got full exposure to those types of frameworks that help you to do the relationship modeling and the maturity assessments, those pieces. What I do have is a series of templates that I've used to help me with my stakeholdership and tracking my stakeholder, my stakeholder management. Those pieces have functioned for me as a CRM, really, of just helping me to remember where someone's interests are, what their, blue chip objectives are, how they can go in and make those approaches. So whether there's someone who is very aggressive and knowing all of the detail that that an executive would not want to know, or if it's someone who has what I would consider a more common model in our organization, which is I trust my leaders to deliver on what I've asked them to deliver on. If they say this is what we're going to do, this is where we're going. Being able to know that and then hand over a stakeholder when you need to, when the job needs to shift, then those are pieces that I do have tracking in. But of course, it has been a model of passing down the knowledge that you have organically. And we've done a much better job as an organization since I joined of being more purposeful in that piece, and knowing that just because someone's not asking a question about something does not mean that they know what the answer should be. They may not know necessarily that a senior leader has no idea that in order to go to an investment committee, they need 6 weeks prior of socialization that must go through for people to have that back and forth. A business partner needs to know that, because it's not the job of a senior leader to know that within the organization. It's the senior leader's job to know what the benefits may be and what the actual problem is that they're trying to address. But the process itself, we need to act as a shaman. And so there's 2 sides to that. There's the side of being able to intuitively know when you need to step in and say, okay, business, this is how far you need to push your expectations back, but also knowing the peers sitting next to you that may be doing the same process for the first time for another senior leader. They need to know the traps that may be in those steps, without insinuating that they don't know the process, but influencing, applying that experience and saying, hey, by the way, make sure that you're telling this person in advance that they're going to have to go through 5 or 6 iterations of this. Make sure you're telling them that they need 3 or 4 people to go in and validate that the benefits that they're touting are actually tangible.
Right.
Knowing those pieces that may not be obvious, or may be obvious, may not, it's one of those, we're back to this gray space, right? What do you know? What do you not know? Assume nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
And continue to push forward from there.
I think this is one of the challenges a BRM faces, but also one of the benefits of having a BRM, because every relationship is different. Everyone needs different things. And so it's kind of up to the business partner or BRM to get to understand what they are and to be able to deliver to those points. So I was going to ask if you have like a new business partner come on board or a new BRM come on board, is there a right? Here's your cheat sheet. Here's where you need to go away, and this is your starting point, and then you can work on it from there. Is that something as a team that you have? There's kind of a line of attack.
We do, yes. We have certain pieces that are parsed out in that way, and I'll say it along the lines of that type of vertical knowledge pieces, the vertical training that creates a clearer picture across the breadth of skills that you need. So, for example, we'll have specific trainings that we've done in our Oracle Primavera Cloud instance. So when we do our demand planning in OPC, we'll have training that's provided by our PMO in using that service. Prior to loading demand into that, however, we use another DevOps board to integrate our new ideas and mature them into something that is actual demand. We have some training pieces in there that is self-generated by our team. Okay. So that one is, albeit a little less formal and maybe a little less polished, but it is highly specific to our role. And then we partner together. So what we'll do is typically we'll have someone who is more tenured and someone who is brand new partner together, so that you say, okay, anything that you need to know, go and ask this person. And then the natural growth from there is when I get to do this, I learned all of the things that I didn't know by being asked. Just like any mentor-mentee relationship, you think you're going into it knowing everything, and then you're asked a question that you don't know. Well, that's another opportunity for you to go off and learn. That partnership, that relationship management within our own relationship managers, is a great way for us to have an organic learning model to go after in that space.
I've heard just talking about those relationships, and I mean, so something I've seen a lot recently is that BRMs have always kind of struggled to articulate their value. Some companies seem to get it, and others seem to struggle. And even those that companies that have had BRMs for years and business partners for years, they still, because they don't really understand it properly, there's still that struggle that people are justifying their existence a lot. And so one of the things I've heard recently is that, and I think this might be the reason why, is that as BRMs, they try to hold on to the relationships themselves because they want to develop them and nurture them and make them more effective. They kind of hold on to those relationships themselves instead of kind of spreading them out. So rather than kind of connecting people, and this is one of the things that, that's in the Institute's guidance, is that you're a connector as well as a navigator and the orchestrator. But there's not typically in those organizations where people are struggling to articulate their value, it seems they're not doing a lot of connecting. So they're holding on to those relationships rather than saying, okay, that you two can go away and do this. So I don't need to be involved. I'm happy that you know what you're doing. So is there much of that for you, that rather than trying to kind of hold on to all those relationships, you're happy to just let people get together? You trust people to do you have much of that?
Yeah, that's another great question. I've had in this organization a real mixed bag of how to go after that, because on one hand, there is that "what have you done for me lately" question that can come up from any role, whether you're an engineer or someone like me who's not doing real work anymore. This is something I use the humor to have a real hyperbolic view on this, but I will frequently, to my senior stakeholders, to anyone in my network, say, I used to work hard and now I talk about hard work. But that really is kind of how our organization is set up. There are many processes that start with your IT business partner, but it is well documented that the IT business partner is not the end all be all for what you need. The IT business partner is the key that unlocks the door. It's not the person that goes and is the entire delivery model. Your IT business partner is someone that you need to rely on. The more you hand to your IT business partner, the more your IT business partner can hand back to you and make those connections made. for me, I always look at it as a silo buster. So when there is siloed work to be done, whether that is within the silos of the individual delivery towers in our IT organization, or even down to the basic silos of our business structure between civil, power systems, defense, and our central organization, there can be competing interests between those, and there's parity across the board in many of our roles. So we're going toward the same goal and approaching it from different angles. We need to make sure that we're able to join those pieces together. So with our process being something that in order to get demand onto the portfolio, you need to go to your IT business partner. In order to get a new application onto the APL, our application list, you have to go to your IT business partner. Nonetheless, I still set up a meeting and say, listen, here is the person that is looking for this application, and here is the architect that can help you pull that together. Or here is an analyst that can help us get closer to where we have a clear picture of what that demand is.
Right.
There's that juxtaposition of, again, back to what have you done for me lately, and what actually is this role doing? But nonetheless, anytime we were to step away, or if there are pieces of the organization that do not have representation of a business partner, much of our central organization does not have business partners in there, it still comes back, okay, well, we don't know how to navigate this process. At some point, a business partner needs to step in and provide some massaging and guidance to get things in the right direction. So our organization is quite mature en masse in understanding the value of our BRM.
That's great to hear, and that kind of works exactly as I would hope it would. I mean, I always think of business partners or BRMs as like the oil on the gears. I mean, you could probably get away without them, but it's going to be a much smoother process with them. And also, there's the oversight thing, and this is something that really surprised me when I first got involved with BRMs. You start talking to organizations, and you realize that there isn't a lot of oversight. I mean, everyone knows what the project's doing. So there's a project map and everyone knows, all the points you need to hit along that. But the actual oversight of these programs, there isn't a lot of that going on. And from an investment perspective and, resourcing, all the things that every IT function seems to be struggling with, every business seems to be struggling with, this is the point that doesn't seem to have oversight. And this is where BRMs and business partners are providing that and providing fantastic value to that process. So, but it's wonderful to hear how you're approaching that. That's kind of exactly how we would hope how it works.
Yeah, I believe that oversight is something that is really easy to miss, and the reason is that according to the process, if you have a process defined as a business, which any company that's going to have business partners and business relationship managers, they're going to have their processes defined. They're going to be at a maturity level that they're going to have those processes defined. Nowhere in that process is there a step that says break down and don't understand what the competing interests may be between the business. That's not one of the steps in the process. Each individual and each position and each role within those processes, within the successful running of a business, has their own interest in what needs to be done. It is all well and good to say, hey, make sure you're working in a way that aids the next person in line in doing their job well. But what does that actually mean when the rubber hits the road? When the rubber hits the road, there needs to be someone who's coming in that can wear the hat of whoever's not there. And I've often joked about going off and buying an hat that just has the name of every role in the company, because when you're the relationship manager, that's what you're doing. You're going in and you're picking and choosing what hat you're wearing in every single conversation you're having, because you've got to be able to look at the full picture of what the company needs and not just what is going to get this project finished quicker or on budget or, deliver the most benefit to this particular team. What you're looking at is allocating the resource correctly. You're not responsible for allocating that resource, but you've got to make sure that resource is available when it needs to be available, or you've got to make sure that if that resource is not available, that your stakeholders understand why it's not available and why that is good for the company overall, even if it is detrimental to their product. All of those pieces, having the emotional maturity to navigate those conversations and understand why someone is asking a question, not just know the answer to their question. And seeing how to apply the oil and where, in that gear analogy again, how to apply the oil and where, so that you can create a cohesive picture and understand, okay, yes, this is our strategy, but what is the actual best case scenario? Because our customers are coming in with new demands, our supply chain is having different changes, and we're constantly having to work through different things in those pieces. It's not a predictable and easy scenario to move through. You've got to have your process and apply reasoning beyond, hey, here's how I can get my next step done across the board.
So what do you think, and going back to what I said earlier, is that there's still so many BRMs are struggling to kind of find their place within the organization, or rather the team's place. Things seem to be working really well at Rolls-Royce. So what would you say has been the thing that has been able to elevate business partnering to a point where your peers see you as a peer, as an equal? So you've got well-established roles that, they've been around since the start of time. BRM is a fairly new role, business partnering. What would you say has helped you kind of get on an even keel so people appreciate you, understand you, and know that you're kind of just as important as any other role?
So I think for me, it's been two things. First of all, meeting someone face-to-face, in person, standing shoulder to shoulder and looking at a problem, and really getting to know someone as a person, not just, okay, what's your demand? What do you need? Taking an order, an order taker type role is something you can do at any maturity level of your relationship with someone. That's one piece of it, is getting past that by meeting in person, meeting as face-to-face as possible, as with the highest level of, hey, you're a real 3D person. Hey, this, that, and the other thing. Our favorite game at Rolls-Royce is How Tall Is This Person Really? Everyone has their camera set at different heights, and it's always a fun game to show up and find out that someone is 7 feet tall. That is the greatest thrill within this role, I think. But the meeting in person and sitting down and talking about your kids or your dog or whatever it may be that you're passionate about, that helps you create that rapport, because what your role is as a business partner is to represent that business when they cannot be there themselves, when the conversation is not something that they may have expertise in, or it's just an engagement within the IT organization that you have 50 different stakeholders you're representing at once into one team to say, hey, here are the 12 things that we're doing or that need to be done over the next year. Being able to be trusted in that piece starts with that face-to-face relationship. So if feasible, you want to meet face-to-face. If not, then creating an environment where you have a regular touch point, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, as often as you can, to not just have a scheduled, here are the 12 things we're going to talk about in our call, Mr. Smith, and then talking through those 12 things and saying, here, have 13 minutes back into your time. Use those 13 minutes to fruitfully get to know that person so that you are able to represent them more accurately. Again, back to that face-to-face, that face-to-face interaction. I'm actually in the middle right now of writing up a white paper based on part of my continuing education on the value created by face-to-face interaction. Harvard Business Review had a study a few years back that teams that worked in person were 34 times more effective than teams that worked digitally. That's obvious, I think. But at the same time, how do you put that in a global team? For me, it can be 2,000 pounds or more for me to travel over and sit down in 3 or 4 meetings. Is that really worth it? Well, does that bring the process down by 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks? What is our time to delivery? What is our piece there? Those are quotients that you have to use to justify those pieces. Coming back to the second portion though, so one, you have that face-to-face interaction, really getting to know someone. Coming back to that second portion, it is the follow-up to that is, okay, well, my stakeholder was not in that meeting. What exactly does my stakeholder need to know from that meeting? Or even better, I was sitting next to my stakeholder in that meeting. What did I hear? What did they hear? How can I give them the most relevant information to unlock a higher level of knowledge, of understanding of here's what we're doing next. Here's how long this is going to take. Being able to write down and record, here are the 8, 10, 15, if it's a really long workshop, 50 things you need to know from that. And remember, those are the pieces that your stakeholders are going to come back to and say, okay, well, if I'm referencing this email from Gavin 5 times a week while we're going through this transformation, that's a really high value item that I've now generated for them. So anytime that I'm sitting in an important workshop or I'm sitting in a meeting that has relevance to my business, I want to be taking notes from the perspective of the business and distributing those out. Hey, here, I was in this conversation. Here's what you need to know from it. Whether that comes up in a monthly or quarterly review with a C-suite member, they may not need to be in the nitty-gritty details. Everybody's different. Or if it's someone who they have their name signed next to an objective that needs to be worked through, that person is likely going to want to know the snares that are coming up, the victories that have been done, the timing of things, the risks that are being realized, or the risks that are being mitigated. Being able to put those pieces in place anytime, hey, what is the value of X person comes up, they're gonna, hey, hang on, don't take this person away from me. I need my business partner to speak techese for me, or I need my business partner to help me through these finance processes because finance is constantly having more and more and more for me to need to come back with. These are the ways that we unlock that embedded, indispensable value for the company. That single point of value is something that is I think that's where I've done my best work with the business.
Just touching quickly on finance there, there's a couple of guests we've had on, and the last one I think was Shelley, that's saying that you need to really be aware of how the business is making money. You need to be able to follow the money. You need to have good financial acumen. Is that something that you've found and that has maybe surprised you, that coming into this IT business partner role, that you really do need to have a better handle on how money's being spent, how money's being made?
Yes. And I can leave it there, but I won't. So absolutely. I think as a BRM overall, there are many paths to being a BRM. For me, it started in hardcore IT delivery. I've worked in many different spaces of IT, specializing and generalizing depending on where my role needed to lead. And then I've come into this role, and luckily I had studied accounting some school, so I knew a bit of these pieces, but the depth of my knowledge in the accounting process and in finance overall has had to rapidly accelerate to catch up with my IT expertise. Because in our company, we have a very high focus on capital expenditures. And now we're coming around to the full picture of the total cost of ownership by looking at the operational expenditures that are applied in there as well. The thing that the business typically looks at is their operational costs. They're looking on a monthly and annual basis at what is it actually costing them to operate. They're not looking at their amortization schedules. They're not looking at the depreciation that's hitting. They're not looking at these invisible costs that are just bundled up in just a massive figure that doesn't really mean anything. They don't know that, this 1,000 pounds is the engineering application that they purchased 4 years ago or whatever. They're not concerned about that. They're working day to day on their operating costs. They're looking at the individual lines. So when they go through their accounting process, through their 5-year plan, through their annual target setting, when they're doing that, they're thinking OpEx, 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 OpEx. So they will typically put the money that they need to do something into their normal channels and go to an OpEx bucket. And then the conversation comes up. Hey, I'd like to go off and bring this application in. It's going to cost us estimated blah, blah, blah amount. They've gone and done their homework or whatever. Okay, well, first of all, let's multiply that 5x. Because you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, and you don't need to know what you don't need to know. So let's multiply that 5x, but I have a better question for you. What color is your money? And they say, well, whatever. I mean, I've got the money in my budget. I said, is it OpEx or is it CapEx? And if it is not capital expenditure, if it's not labeled capital, you don't actually have it. You might have operational costs, a big bucket of IT spend that you've put in with your controller, but that's not going to help us. We're going to still have to navigate this emergent demand process and say, hey, we've got this capital expenditure we need to make and get through that piece. So understanding why those things are different and understanding how to explain that to the business in a way that is not condescending, that is not, I can't believe you've done this again, or anything like that. It is just, hey, surprise, money is not money. We have lots of different pockets in these pants, and we may need to be reaching into different pockets, but they are different pockets, and they're accessed differently. They have zippers. Some are buttoned. Some just
Welded.
Open pockets. Yeah. So it's being able to describe that in a way that allows us to move forward and says, okay, yeah, you've got this allocation in here, but it's not quite right. And then from there, being able to ingratiate yourself with that part of the business and saying, okay, well, this happened in 2024. It's not going to happen in 2026. It's not going to happen in 2028. We're going to be able to go through these steps again, and we're going to have greater levels of understanding of why we need to move back and forth. But if you do not know why things are that way, if you do not know why a capital asset is different than just purchasing a license and having an annual renewal for a software as a service, if you don't know those things, then you can't speak to the business with authority. You need to be able to do that because you really do need to wear the hat of finance until finance gets involved. Because if you set yourself up incorrectly at the infancy of that project, you're going to be pushing the stone uphill, when in reality, you all need to be picking it up and running together down the hill toward delivery.
Yeah. And it's not something I've heard many BRMs talk about. So I said that we've had a few guests and mention it, but not many. And I think this is probably another way where people can express their value to an organization, because when they explain that they do have this financial acumen, they can help from like an investment perspective and a cost control perspective. They are able to have these conversations. That I think that immediately makes them a lot more valuable to more senior people within the business, because they know there's an appreciation for those. Just going back to your face-to-face meetings you were talking about, it made me think. I've worked in a few organizations now where every year they have big sales kickoffs. So all the sales guys get together and like, this is the direction we're heading. You know, it's all motivational, and everyone's kind of getting geared up, and everyone being patted on the back. I'm lucky that I've been to a few of those, and they're great events, no expense spared. It only has ever happened in companies I work for the sales guys, which is a real shame, because that's only part of the business. And I just wonder, I know that I spoke to Jag in one of the earlier episodes. They have town halls. So it's not really kickoffs, but they do have times where they can all get together, but lots of people in the room at the same time that would otherwise never meet. So you can share ideas, share what you're working on. You know, everyone understands the same strategy. And I think that's really so beneficial. And going back to the report you mentioned about, being 34% more effective. I myself, I think there is a benefit to hybrid working and online working, but there's no face to face is the best way, I think. And I've again we've done a few meetings where it's been like role playing, and you get different people in the room again that you haven't met before. And it's amazing when you speak to someone face to face. And these could be someone you originally thought, I really don't like this person. Like, I don't like their attitude. When they email me, it's always, very curt. And then you talk to someone and you think, well, actually, they're a good person. They're not evil. They've got their own pressures. So when they ask me to do something, it's not because they dislike me or they're being difficult. It's just that they've got things they need to do. So having those face-to-faces, I think, is really, really important where it's possible. But I just wondered if within Rolls-Royce you do have these get-togethers where you can get lots of people, lots of stakeholders in the room at the same time to kind of all meet, share your stories and share what you're working on, and just build those relationships.
Yeah, and again, another great question here. And I've been part of organizations that did do the sales. Let's all get together and we'll talk through the materials that we're doing this year, any changes that we would have. In fact, at my previous company, it was a German-based company, and I'll reference them first in order to show, just the cultural value at times. It's a German-based company, and so we had an IT organization that would be cascading down different requirements. And the IT environment in Germany and the IT environment in North America can be quite different. One example of that would be just the basic availability of wireless signal. So in our German organization, it was really easy for them to say, hey, you have to have a SIM card slot in your PC in order for us to allow you to purchase that PC. The PC model has to have a SIM card slot. Okay, great. Well, in Germany, it's less than the size of Texas, so it's pretty easy to know that everywhere you go, you're going to have AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile, this specific service. You're going to have it in there because all of the towers are in this same location. In the US, what we were having to do is we would have this SIM card put in there, and we would have entire salespeople that had 4 states in the West that never saw a bar of that signal. And it would be thousands of dollars we would spend, not only for the device itself, because we needed to have that SIM card in there, but for the service that was never usable. Those types of nuances and pieces in there, we would be handing those devices to those teams. I would be traveling to Las Vegas each year, no complaints, to sit with these team members, go through the new devices. Hey, here's what's new about this. What's all of this? Those relationships that I created with those sales managers, with those regional managers, with the regional directors, those were indispensable in that organization. Add into that the cultural differences between what I would say is the most extreme of friendly professionalism in the US. In the US, immediately you're a perceived friend. You're not just a colleague. We're in this together. It's very chummy between friends in the US. In Germany, it is the process, and this is just a cultural norm, is I've never met you in person. Don't talk to me like we're friends. Okay. Even if we've had 100 calls, this is transactional, back and forth. And so if you're that type of jovial, friendly person, which most business relationship managers are, you want to have that relationship, then that really falls apart if you're not meeting in person.
Right.
So in that company, we've had a good set of, okay, let's go over there. Let's have them come over here. Let's exchange ideas. Let's stand shoulder to shoulder. That's something very, very important to me, is shoulder to shoulder, facing the same problem, working together. They're not face-to-face individuals approaching problems from different sides. Shoulder to shoulder, let's look at it, let's work through things, let's joke, let's do all of that. I am a veteran, so I've got to pull things back, and how much I tease people sometimes. That's, part of the maturity that you're picking up as you leave the armed services into the civilian world. but being able to flex that muscle from time to time and, talking to, like, yeah, of course I'm bald. That's because God really wanted people to see my head. It's a waste of time to have such a great haircut. It's in the way of what really everyone wants to see. True. Those types of things of being able to join that piece. Step into Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce has a global footprint. We have many different sets of parity across the organization. And we have process built on process, built on process, built on process. We are over 100 years old as a company. And at times it feels like that's how old our IT is as well. And so we have this technical debt and these pieces that we're looking at as major issues, could be translated as low-hanging fruit. And so it's really easy for us to say, oh, we did this without meeting in person, or we did that without with the team all coming together on these workshops. So while we do have the town halls, while we do have leadership going around, it is typically and more common for our leadership teams, our first 3 layers of the organization, our top 3 layers of the organization, to go around and continue to stay connected with the business. That is great. That should continue to happen. Every company needs to make sure that is occurring. However, what I am looking at in my research is, how can we start to show the value? How can I start to demonstrate the value of someone like myself going and sitting with Jeremy Byrne, for example? So Jeremy, I know, is someone that you know probably very well, and he's been on this podcast before. I've never met Jeremy in person. I've been to Derby once, as of a couple weeks ago, where I spaced out of, and he just happened to have been out of office that day when I had some time to sit in the IT wing.
Right.
So it's unfortunate that we've not met in person. I've not been able to play the game. Jeremy could be 7 feet tall. He could be 4'8". I don't know. His cameras, change how you look sometimes. But I would love to be able to demonstrate and say, okay, let's make this a scalable solution. Let's do collaboration weeks where we have relationship-based or engagement-based roles, where we have relationship-based roles that go and just co-locate for a week.
Right.
So collaboration week would be, I'm not going over there for a town hall. It would be great if there's a town hall. It would be great if we are setting our 5-year plan in stone, or doing our 8+4 adjustment, or 4+8 adjustment, or our resource allocation adjustment that week. But more importantly is the time that is unallocated, unstructured. What are the times where I'm just sitting there and I get the drive-bys, or I am the drive-by that says, oh, hey, really nice to meet you. I know we've worked on this, that, and that. We've never actually sat down and met. Do you have time sometime today, or you can pull away and we can talk? Those types of pieces, just sitting in a space that you've never sat in before and working on what you normally work on, and allowing yourself extra room for those drive-by conversations. In business engagement, in business relationship management, business partnership, that's pretty obvious that we need to be doing that. It's when you get into, okay, well, the data scientists. What about our data scientists? How do we take the data scientist that's been sitting in Indianapolis doing very, very critical, important work, pick them up, drop them in the data science team in the civil organization for a week, where they can just sit next to each other? And yeah, we probably have export control issues and those types of things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you take an entire week and throw it away. That week is spent going, whoa, this is how you approach this. This is your process. It's not just the sharing of results. I think that's very easy to do over Teams or over Zoom or through email. It's not just the sharing of results. It's the sharing of the failures. It's the sharing of, well, I tried this and I got this result, but I found that this process was a little better for me. That can be done on any role. And being able to quantify that is something that I'm eager to see develop in my form of research. I'm not going to go and write a doctoral thesis on this or anything, but really I'd like to get a white paper put together that says, okay, here are the benefits from us sitting together. I was in Derby for 4 hours of unstructured time, and I managed to have 5 different meetings that would have taken me 3 weeks or 4 weeks on a typical, hey, diary crash here, diary crash there, those types of things. Just standing there and people going, oh, you're Gavin. And having those conversations, you can work through something so quickly.
Yeah.
And then also you can have your personality being shown. You can, really make that face-to-face connection with someone. We are creatures of tribal nature. So we have our own biases that we have when we're sitting in we're sitting in completely different continents right now, viewing each other through a flat screen in front of us. There are lots of pieces here that our biases are not falling away.
Yeah.
Now, you and I are both practiced in allowing that to drop, but when you're in person, even someone who's never tried that before is going to, sit in the room and say, I ordered a lemonade today and I got a Sprite. What is up with that? As an American, what the heck happened? I wanted a lemonade. And then everyone around the room is going to go, what's a lemonade? It's a sugary lemon drink. It's not carbonated. It's just by doing something like that, just saying something silly, as silly and basic as that, you've broken down the barrier that is, well, yeah, if I ask for a lemonade, I'm going to get a fizzy lemon drink from the fountain. That's just being able to do those pieces. All of a sudden, you've had 4, 5, 6 conversations on very critical subjects that have gotten a ton of leverage applied to them. And the next 5, 10, 12 things that you need to accomplish with that particular person, with that organizational lever, you now have first dibs at pulling that lever. They're going to answer your email quicker. They're going to get back to you more efficiently. They're going to know and trust that what you're asking for is legitimate more naturally by doing that. So I'm hoping to have some of that put together, published, and approved in the near future, and perhaps I can share that with you, and we can apply it.
Yeah, please do. No, I'd be fascinated to read that. That'd be wonderful. That'd be great. I see we're actually getting short of time here, but I just wondered, the role has probably changed quite a bit since you moved into it. You've developed it yourself, and there's been development within the organization. How do you see it changing from here on in? Do you think you're at a point, at a sweet spot now where you're just carrying it as things are, or do you think things are going to change because there are organizational changes, there are kind of exterior forces?
One more, asking this question, I see you want to talk for another hour. This is one where every time you learn more about the role, and this may be unique to Rolls-Royce, I'm sure it's not specifically unique, but perhaps in our level of transformation in our organization, our role is getting more and more critical between the processes. We are moving very, very quickly at every stage in every department, vertically, horizontally. All of our processes are being questioned and changed and moved around. And for a business partner, we can either be the single point of failure or the single point of value. And in the last few charts that we've had where it has been our organizational changes and who's doing what and how we're dividing our service delivery and our enterprise architecture, and the business engagement piece is not listed. Okay, well, there's arrows joining each of those pieces, and they're maybe 1 point or 2 point thickness arrows, and I see those arrows and I go, oh no, those are critical pieces for how we adjoin these processes prior to when we have all the kinks worked out. The role is always, always, always changing. Right now at Rolls-Royce specifically, the role is in a huge, huge cliff. So we're about to jump into a very new way of working. We are moving from a civil only demand process, a defense business only demand process, and then our IT for IT demand process. We're moving from those three competing silos into one cohesive picture. And we have one of our enterprise architects who's gone through and gathered every bit of demand across all of the businesses, collated them together, tried to piece them together into work streams that are like for like. And I'm not sure how this person has survived this sprint of work. But moving from that into this model where we have, okay, well, you want CRM development in civil. We're not so eager to see CRM change too much, just hypothetically. In defense, how do we make sure that civil is still allowed to move forward with their changes while also accounting for the way civil is working? It's going to be the business engagement teams that have to set that prioritization, that have to set and make sure that the business needs are still spoken for, even if they're not stakeholders in that process. We're going to have to start looking at it that way. And the business relationship management role is going to become a huge piece of that being successful. Otherwise, we're going to go away and have, okay, well, defense wanted to do this CRM investment and civil wanted to do this CRM investment. We've made it one, and whoever comes to the table is going to get what they want. Whoever doesn't, too bad. You should have been there. We're too big of an organization. We're too horizontal to do that organically. We've got to have a role that has the authority to go, whoa, let's ask and make sure that, our NATO allies are on board if it's being done. Those are the pieces that I think we're really going to see some major changes within our org, even between the 5 business partners in defense and the much larger organization of civil. We're going to start seeing a lot more parity and equality of being at the table at the same time within those work streams.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Gavin. I know you've got a hard stop at 1. I wonder if at some point in the future you could just give us a pearl of wisdom that we could share with everyone, or if you have time now, very quickly, just something you can, for BRMs listening that might be struggling or might need some advice. What's the one tip you might give people to improve themselves?
Find your champion. So wherever you are in the organization, whenever someone seems eager to get your help, whenever someone seems like they really need help, find a way to really win for them.
Right.
And then they will spread your influence within the organization. Find your champion.
Wonderful. That's fantastic advice, and not something we've had before. So that's really wonderful. Well, look, Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone listening or watching has enjoyed this episode. And I wish you the best of luck with this big challenge you have ahead of you.